Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. So it's late December. Now I'm going to start getting planting already for 2021. I want it to be a good year this year, so let's get planting. Now I've got some more chilies on order, but what I'm going to plant is some of the seeds that I've saved from chilies that I've had in the house. Now I went down to the local grocery store the other day and I went and bought some green chilies, but what I was doing was I was rummaging around the chili basket trying to find the reddest, ripest chilies that I could find. So I brought home these ones, and these are the ones that I'm going to take the seeds out and I'm going to plant from these. So to take the seed out, all I'm going to do is split it down the middle, and this one's packed full of seeds. Now if you're a little bit sensitive, then it's good for you to do this wearing gloves, because you're going to be scraping out and you're going to be messing about with something that's very hot. So, the last time I was trying to save the seeds from the Naga, and I've got cracked fingers. So what I did was I took the seeds out, and I didn't wear gloves. I just took all the seeds out with my hands on, and then because of my cracked fingers, my fingers felt like they were on fire after I'd done that. So be very careful when you're doing this, and then make sure you clean your hands afterwards as well, because you don't want to be like me and rub your eyes with them. There we go. That's a fair few seeds. That I'm not going to need to. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. That's a good few seeds. Now the ones that I've chopped in half are not going to germinate, so we don't need to worry about them. These are quite fresh, so there's no need to dry these. There's no need to, if you're not storing them, there's no need to do anything with them. You can plant these straight as they are. So let's get planting these. There's no need to waste this. That'll get used in some cooking, so we'll save that. These seeds that we've got, if we can just get these to germinate, we're going to have good few plants. So let's get these planted. I managed to harvest these seeds without much gunk on them. If there was a lot of gunk on them or a lot of slimy stuff, then it'd be a good idea to clean them up using a paper towel or a kitchen towel or something. The reason that you don't want the gunk on is because that gunk can become mouldy. So all I'm doing is I'm removing this little bit of thread where the seeds were attached, and that's enough for me. That's good enough for me. As with all seeds, it's quite straightforward in the actual planting. I'm going to use this one pot to plant all my seeds in, and then as they grow I'll prick them out and I'll separate them. I've filled it with compost and I've levelled it down so I've got a nice smooth surface, and I'm just going to take my chili seeds and I just scrape them in off the board straight into here. So I'm just going to separate them out in here so they're not all clustered in one spot. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect, so don't worry about it, how evenly you get it spread out. The only reason that you want them spread out as much as you can is so it's easier when it comes to pricking them out and separating them. But right now, because I don't know how many seeds are going to germinate and how many aren't, I'm just going to plant them like this, and then I've got a good basis to work from. And now I'm just going to give this a gentle covering with compost. And this compost, all this is homemade compost. It's been sifted out a couple of times to get rid of any rough bits, and then a bit of sharp sand added into it. Now if you haven't got homemade compost, just get some ordinary multi-purpose. You don't need the specialist seed compost, it just costs you a lot more. Get some homemade, get some multi-purpose, add a bit of sharp sand to it, sift it together, and you've got yourself a nice potting mix. Remember, it doesn't have to be too fertile, but it wants to be nice and free draining. So they're my shot chili seeds. Now the mistake that I made last year was I didn't label my plants properly. I've never been very good at labeling plants properly, and I gave away all of my cayenne peppers, my hot peppers. All I was left with was some chili plants from that I'd crossed between a cayenne pepper and basket of fire, and that's all I was left with. So I had about 12, 13 plants of those instead of having all my different varieties that I wanted. So this year I've got to be a bit more careful, so that's a lesson for you guys. So just make sure you're careful with how you label things. So let's get that label on. So it's tea, Jim, but not as we know it. Excuse my Star Trek reference. But anyway, so what I've got here is I've had my chilli seeds soaking overnight, and I've done the same thing with my aubergines, and that's one of the other things that I'm planting right now. So what I've done with these cups of tea is I've taken some ordinary tea. I mean, I use PG Tips, Tetley's, Yorkshire tea, whatever your variety, no problem. I'm not sponsored by any of them. So what I did was, after I made my morning cup of tea, I took the tea bag, filled this jug of boiling hot water and put the tea bag in here and let it soak and let it brew properly. And then once it had cooled down, all I did was I poured a small amount into individual cups and I put my different seeds into those and let them soak overnight. I've put a couple of pictures up on my Facebook group, My Family Garden #Team Spanner, of the aubergine seeds that I've done the same thing with these chilli seeds in, and some of those have actually started sprouting only after a day of being soaked in this tea solution. So it's quite a nifty trick to get your seeds to sprout a little bit earlier. What we're trying to do is we're trying to mimic being inside the stomach of an animal. Because tea is mildly acidic, what happens is it softens the coating of the seed. So it's a good trick to do. I mean, it's a rule of thumb that my mum has, is any seed that's dry, any seed that's old, and it needs that little bit of the plant might struggle from, breaking out the seed case, then it's a good idea to soak it. And soaking it in this tea, it just gives it that little boost. And these are all recycled pots. So initially they had flowers in them, and then my friend bought some flowers in them, and then instead of throwing them away, he gave them to me. And now I used them last year, and I'm using them again this year. So you can keep, instead of just throwing these pots away, the best way of recycling plastic is to find another use for it. Before you throw it away, use it again, and that is the best way of recycling anything. So all these seeds that I'm sowing, these are all saved seeds from chilies that have either been sent to me or I've bought and I've liked, and this is what I'm planting. Now this is the red fire chili that Gary Finch sent me. So I saved the seeds from them. So I've got 4 seeds in here. Like before, all I'm going to do is I'm going to spread the seeds out into the 4 corners of this pot, and then I'm going to cover that with a little bit of compost over the top. And it doesn't have to be deep, so just a light dusting, and the compost that I put over the top I'll keep loose. Okay. The next one that I'm going to do is I'm going to do the Dorset Naga, and these are also ones from the seeds that Gary sent me. These seeds are a little bit smaller than the other Naga, and it can be a little bit tricky fishing them out of the water. So if you wanted to, what you could do is you could pour the water through here and let the seeds just fall in. You could just let the seeds just fall out. But the only problem with that is you lose where you put the seeds. So that's the drawback of this, of just pouring it out. I can still see the seeds. So again, what I'll do is I'll just spread them out over the top of the compost. That's it, good. These are a Bangladeshi Naga. Get these planted. And just, again, spread the seeds out as carefully as possible, as far apart as possible in the small space that we've got. But once they do germinate, we will spread these out. Oh, wrong pot. I'm just going to use the old tea to water it down with. So in order to generate chilies, you need a soil temperature from between 18 to about 25 degrees C. That's perfect for germinating your chilies. And the way most people do that is they use a heated propagator. Now if you're like me and you don't have a heated propagator, what you're going to do is, there's a couple of tricks you can do. Is you can wrap them in a plastic bag, and this is like a mini greenhouse. So just wrap them up in that, and give it a tie at the top. And then once you've got it like that, just pop that on top of your boiler. I mean, that's the way I've been germinating seeds for ever since I've been gardening. I've never used a heated propagator. Or you can use your radiator. Just leave them at the side of your radiator. Leave them at the on top of your radiator when it's cooling down. Don't put it on there when it's blaring hot. You'll just cook your seeds, and that's not something that you want to do. If you've just got an unheated propagator, just put the lid over the top and pop it on your windowsill, and that should keep it warm enough for them to germinate. It'll take a little bit longer. It might take 3 to 4 weeks for them to germinate if you're not using heat. But don't worry, they are notoriously slow to germinate. Now, the hotter the chilli, the longer it takes for it to germinate, and the harder it is to get them to germinate, especially in our climate. If you do have hot chilies like Naga, then it can be quite tricky to get them to germinate without using heat. So use your radiator, use your boiler, use a heated propagator if you've got one. Set it to about 18 to 25 degrees temperature on the thermostat, and then you're away. And they should germinate within about 2-3 weeks. This one advantage of the soaking in the tea method that we've had is it can cut germination time by up to a week. In the past, when I've grown chilies just without soaking them in the tea, I've noticed them take around 4 weeks to germinate sometimes. With the tea, I can get it to germinate in 2.5-3 weeks, and I'm quite happy with that. So there we go. Now, the other question is, at this time of year, is we're struggling with light. So what we do in our house is we'll put them on in the morning, we'll have them on our front window, and it'll get the morning sun on there. And by mid-afternoon, the sun's moved around the back of the house, so we'll get them on the back windowsill and get the sun in from there. So that way we're maximising on how much sun we expose our plants to. I do have a light, and some of these plants will get, my super hots like my Nagas, they're going to get under the light because I want to give them all the tender love and care that I can give them. But the ones like the habaneros, yeah, just stick them on the windowsill and let them do what they do. So don't worry about them. If your chili plants do get a little bit leggy, don't worry about it, because when you pot them up, you can plant them deep, so you can go down to the first set of true leaves. So anywhere up to the first set of true leaves, just pop them in on there, and they should root out from the side. They should be fine with that. What I'm going to do this year is I'm going to set up a small garden just on concrete. So I'm going to show you how much food you can grow from about 6 foot space of concrete. So keep an eye out for that series. But I'm going to carry on planting these chilies up, and I hope that's been a little bit helpful for you. So I'm going to leave it there for this one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.